Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be doing a video game music topic, but this is something that I thought would be kinda interesting, and that happens to be Pink Floyd sounding songs in video games. In case anyone didn't know, Pink Floyd is one of my all-time favorite bands. I've loved them since I was a kid, and I still love them to this day. And there's a lot of video game songs that I've heard that definitely do remind me of something that like Pink Floyd would have done. I guess you could say very much inspired. And I wanted to talk about the ones that really stuck out to me the most. Now, one thing that is important to note here is that I'm not trying to look for songs in video games that sound exactly like Pink Floyd songs. Although there is one song I'm going to be mentioning here that does sound very similar to one, but I'll talk about that when I get there. But pretty much for the most part, I'm just going to be talking about songs that kind of remind me of them. It has that sound that you can tell that they must have been inspired. So are we clear? Okay, good. Now, let's get started with the list. So the first one I want to mention here is from one of my beloved favorite RPGs, and that happens to be Shadow Hearts on PS2, with the song Prog. Now, the reason why this song reminds me of Pink Floyd is really the uses of instruments that they use. Like, you got guitar, you got bass, you got drums, you got keyboard. In fact, the sound of the bass and the keyboard definitely does remind me of the Dark Side of the Moon album. I can't think of a specific song on that album, but it definitely does remind me of like a mixture of a bunch of songs off that album. So next up we got is the AI Somnian Files with Sink in the Sustain. Now this is a really awesome visual novel that I really loved a hell lot, and I can highly recommend playing it if you're a fan of the Zero Escape games. But anyways, as for the song itself, it's mostly an acoustic and light guitar type of song, and the songs that it kind of reminds me of, well, it kind of reminds me of 3 Pink Floyd songs actually. So the first one that it kind of reminds me of, it reminds me of some parts of the song Time off Dark Side of the Moon again. And then it also reminds me of the song What's the Deal from Obscured by Clouds album, which is, by the way, a pretty obscure album for Pink Floyd standards. And just a tiny little bit, I can hear a little bit of influences from the song Wish You Were Here from, well, Wish You Were Here. And later on as the song progresses, you do hear some eerie background music, which also does remind me of something that Pink Floyd would definitely do in their songs. So the next one I'm going to mention here is yet another visual novel, and that happens to be 428 Shibuya Scramble with the song Echo. And this may surprise you, but no, the song does not remind me of the song Echoes off the album Metal, although wouldn't that be hilarious? But no, instead this song actually reminds me of most of the songs on their later album, The Division Bell. But there is one song that does stand out from that album that it does remind me a lot of, and that happens to be Marooned. So the song is entirely made out of electric guitar, and just the tone that it sounds just screams Division Bell to me. Also just the way how it's all very mellow too at the same time. That also just reminds me of just Pink Floyd in general. They really knew how to make a song sound heavy rockin' but also chill at the same time. It's quite something. And I think the composers of this game did a great job recreating that feeling. So the next one I'm going to mention is from a really huge series, and that being Final Fantasy. Now, where the hell do I begin on this one? I mean, there's like a shit ton of Pink Floyd sounding songs throughout the series, mostly the ones that are composed by Uematsu. And speaking of Nobu Uematsu himself, it's been well documented that he actually said that he was heavily inspired by bands like Pink Floyd, King Crimson, and even Elton John. So knowing that, there is definitely going to be a lot of references and vibes that you may get from a lot of the Final Fantasy soundtracks that he worked on with those bands that I mentioned. But if I were to talk about one game in the series, though, I probably would have to pick Final Fantasy VII for this one, mostly because I just finished the remake recently, and I've actually been listening to the original soundtrack. But even just picking 7 alone, it's really hard to just pick one, but this is actually the one time that I'm actually going to be picking a song that actually did kind of copy a little bit of a Pink Floyd song, and that being Temple of the Ancients. So this song right here actually sounds very similar to the song Is Anybody Out There from the Wall album. But only that Uematsu's take on this song is not nearly as dark and creepy sounding as Pink Floyd's take, but it still has a very interesting vibe to it that does remind me of Pink Floyd in general. And now, as for the final song I want to mention in this video, happens to be the title screen from Castlevania 4. I remember the very first time I played this game and I first heard that song, the first thing that came to my mind was, this sounds a lot like Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And I can still hear that even listening to it so many times afterwards. And kinda similar to what I said about the song I mentioned from Final Fantasy VII is that it does remind me a part of it, but only that this one is actually more darker sounding than the original. Which makes sense given that it's Castlevania and it's a horror themed game. So yeah, not only does it sound very similar to it, but also has the same vibes going for it as well. So that's all I have to say for this video, so with that said, do you hear like the Pink Floyd vibes from these songs, or am I just like stupid and crazy? Well, that's always possible, right? In fact, there's actually tons of other songs that I easily could have mentioned in here, but I just wanted to keep it short and sweet. But yeah, if you guys have any other songs out there that does remind you of this band, then let me know and I'll take a listen to it. And I would not mind doing another video like this, but comparing video game songs of like other bands that I know and really like. So with that said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.